we have a huge industry. They wanted to diversify. They wanted to consolidate their position globally. They will manufacture in US, in developed countries. We are going to have the global footprint. That may be the strategy of the Indian pharmaceutical industry.
Hello and welcome to Macro Decode. Indian companies made a record investment commitment of $20.5 billion in the United States during the recently held SelectUSA Investment Summit 2026. A major portion of the investment, over $19.1 billion, will come from India's pharmaceutical sector. The development raises several questions. How viable are these investments? And how will outbound investments impact our pharma manufacturing and export earnings? Ravi Uday Bhaskar, former Director General of Pharmexcil, is joining us to share more insights on this development. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Sangeeta.
Can you briefly tell us about the investment commitments by Indian pharmaceutical companies in the US? Is it the first time we are seeing the sector making such large investments in the US?
This is the first time such a kind of a huge investments are being made. Indian pharmaceutical industry grown from small companies to multinational companies. Out of 20 global generic companies, 6 are from India.
Right.
So the recent acquisition of Organon by Sun Pharma for 11.75 billion,
Right.
and back on acquiring Vitaris, most of the companies are focusing on biologics, biosimilars, and the high value products and the contract drug research and development. This is not a new phenomena. Even 10 years back, the Indian companies established their facilities in US. But at that point of time, their approach is very conservative and to focus more on generics and distribution.
Why are Indian pharma companies suddenly accelerating manufacturing investments in the US? India's generic pharma industry was not placed under the tariff regime. Then
Yeah.
why there is a hurry in investing in the US?
I can't say it's a hurried invest. No more you can call them as an Indian companies confined only to manufacture the low cost generics.
Oh.
The generic market US itself is 115 million.
That's right.
So we're exporting only 9 billion.
Right.
So there is a huge potential, particularly in the US.
Okay.
And once you are manufacturing in US, you will have a different kind of a footing globally. If you take the MRA, Mutual Recognition Agreement between US and EU, UE is also 143 billion. So without any inspections, Europe will recognize the US inspections. So
Right.
there are so many trade barriers they can avoid, and they can avoid multi inspections and all. So Indian pharmaceutical industry is looking at a broader perspective.
Okay. But even now, when we are manufacturing for the US market, even for European market, we get the US FDA approval for our manufacturing facilities as well as for our products. They come and inspect the facility and give us the permission to manufacture. So
Yeah.
we don't have to actually go and manufacture in US to get to the US FDA approval. So is there any additional competitors if we are making it in US?
Definitely, there is an additional advantage. If you wanted to supply drugs from India to US, you should have a facility which is having a US FDA approval. If you wanted to export to EU, again, EU regulators has to inspect. So
Right.
if you establish a facility in US, you can supply from US facility to the Europe. You can avoid the trade barriers, and you can avoid that multiple regulatory audits, etc.
India is largely a generic drug producer. So are these investment meant for manufacturing of generics, specialty drugs, or patented drugs?
If you see the recent transaction, they are working on biosimilars, biologics, specialty drugs. So entirely the generic manufacturing activity will not be shifted because the labor costs and is much more than India. If they wanted to manufacture a particular drug in US, it costs almost 30% more than if it is manufactured in India.
That's true.
But when it comes to the compliance cost,
Yeah.
more or less will be the same. Generics are not the major idea.
Okay.
Even if they manufacture generics also, it's going to be a big market for Indian pharmaceutical industry. The global generic industry is more than 500 billion. We are exporting only 31 billion. So still there is a huge potential globally. India can also focus on other emerging markets, and particularly the Latin America, serious countries. We are not leaving that game just like that what we have did 90s, leaving the API industry completely and focusing only on generic formulations.
Right.
That kind of an approach is not there now. The companies are focusing on innovation and research and development, and biosimilars and high value products and complex generics. Even in, if you look at biosimilars and specialty drugs, cost is one of our major strongholds. We always do reverse engineering and control the cost. Will they have the cost advantage if they shift their production to the US? How will the US market be willing to pay higher prices for locally manufactured generics or even specialty drugs? If you have a manpower, you have a different kind of skill sets, particularly manufacturing the biologics, biosimilars, and these drugs are very expensive. So, you know, that definitely the other companies are manufacturing at a higher price, and we are also going to manufacture in that level. And these people are focusing on the companies which are very much established, and they are having their operations in 130, 140 countries. So they will give the access to these countries. India will come out of low cost generic manufacturer kind of a brand. That doesn't mean Indian companies are not intelligent enough to leave these generic formulations. So US has been having a lot of issues with regards to trade and tariffs. Could these investment become financially unviable if trade policies change after a new administration comes in? How risky are these investments? The present administration is the worst administration. If the present regime changes also, it's not going to have any serious impact on us because the US saved particularly 219 billion by purchasing Indian pharmaceuticals in the year 2022. And from 2009, they have saved trillions in this healthcare system. Once you become a US company, you are more or less governed by the US laws. What happens once another government comes in and it finds that, you know, the tariffs are actually hurting its own, market, its own consumption, as far as, specialty drugs as well as patented drugs are concerned, that if they think that we can probably get it at a cheaper rate from outside, will these investments become a liability? Actually, it's a very hypothetical the questions. It's all depends on the geopolitical issues and the logistics. India having a very strong pharmaceutical industry. That is one. The other point is that as long as we manufacture the quality drugs at this price, naturally our price will be definitely lower than even if the American companies manufacture in their own country. So the Indian companies can produce a large number of patented medicines or R&D activities. The Indian companies are playing the safe game. That's what I feel. They're the investment by the Indian companies in our market, in their own pharmaceutical manufacturing facilities here, will that come down if they are going and investing in the US? No, Indian pharmaceutical industry is very huge in size. We have 3,500 facilities. How many people can go and establish their facilities in the US? When we are discussing about these big companies, but there are huge population, they need medicines. At the same time, There are huge number of companies. The growth is going to be a continuous process.
Now we look at Make in India, the PLI schemes that has been announced by the government. How is this going to be affected? Like in the PLI scheme, actually, we also had a scheme for APIs because we are still buying from China. There we need a lot of self-sufficiency. Going ahead, will there be adequate investments in the pharmaceutical sector? How about the Make in India and PLI schemes?
The PLI scheme was a good idea. PLI scheme is not to replace the entire API imports. It is to reduce the dependence of critical APIs and
Right.
KSMs. They have already invested 41,000 crores something before the targeted timelines. But my point is that even after this, if you see our imports, 70% of our imports we are getting from China. Not only India, most of the world is dependent on China. The Chinese have mastered the art of manufacturing APIs, basic chemicals, and key starting materials in high capacities. That is their expertise. Manufacturing formulations is our expertise. In PLI policy, the major companies got the advantage. They would have extended this scheme to all the companies with a minimum criteria, and to whoever manufacturing those identified products, they can give that incentives to them. Instead of that, the big companies are doing that, they are monopolizing. In PLI policy, we have not discussed anything about price. If its product is supplied lower price than Indian price by Chinese, Indian companies will buy from them, including the person who is got PLI scheme. Right. So pricing is very much important in this process. At the same time, they would have extended to all the industry. So now imports are almost more than 9 billion. There is a growth of 7%. Our export growth was in this financial year, it's only 2%. So out of 31 billion, our imports are 9 billion. So more than 30% we are importing. So we need to bring more people into this net, encourage the Indian MSMEs particularly, who manufacture these identified APIs or basic chemicals or intermediates or whatever it may be. Right. You have made a very valid point. Actually, when the PLI schemes were announced, they should have given it to everyone, micro, small, medium, everyone should have been given the same incentive because, the production is important. It's not the size of the company. And now when we look at the investment that is going to US, if more value added pharma manufacturing is shifting to the US, what will happen to India's export earnings? Will India lose its position as the pharmacy of the world? Out of global to 550 billion generic market, even if what is our share? Right. We are exporting to most of the countries in the world. The reason is that we manufacture quality drugs at a very affordable price. Some companies in Europe, one company's turnover or business is much more than our entire Indian pharmaceutical market. Right. So there is a huge potential in other countries. We need to work on extending our market to the other countries, particularly focusing on the poor and the emerging markets. Our generic drugs are very much relevant to them because of our cost effectiveness. Right. We played a very, very important role in saving millions of population, particularly from the dreaded diseases like HIV, tuberculosis, malaria. Right. And that is the reason India is identified as a pharmacy of the world. But if you see in terms of export value, it's not very much relevant to that tag. Yeah, precisely. That's what I was intending to say that, when we have a hold on generic medicines, we should have actually gone up in the higher in the value chain, like, going ahead with specialty drugs and patented it, rather than investing in other countries
can't we make it in India itself? Like, we have done reverse engineering and brought pharma into our country. Can't we do it in the case of higher value products as well? So that manufacture here, employment generation will go up and our export earnings will also go up.
We have a huge industry. They wanted to diversify. They wanted to consolidate their position globally. That is the plan of the Indian pharmaceutical industry. They are not going to desert the India or Indian population. If they stop it, costing is going to play a role. Indian consumer can't afford to pay that much of money, but at the same time, they can have the good money if they manufacture in US or Europe.
Right. Lastly, will India get any benefit out of such outbound investments?
It's a portfolio diversification and specialty growth. That
Hmm.
is the one benefit,
Hmm.
and the other one is the direct access
Hmm.
to the regulated market. As 50% of our exports are going to EU and US. That will give an access to the regulated market and bypass trade barriers, and it will reduce the timelines as well as the costing also. So in India, it takes a lot of time for the USFDA inspectors to come. They may go for a tech transfer also to their Indian the companies. This kind of an advantage is very much needed to consolidate our position.
Right. Right. So that was Mr. Ravi Uday Bhaskar. He finds that the Indian pharmaceutical companies going to US will probably help them bypass many of the compliances. The tariff pressure also will be low on them. But we also hope that they will continue to invest in the Indian market, bring the technology from there, and our pharmaceutical industry will keep growing, our exports will keep growing, and we will remain the pharmacy of the world, not just for generic drugs but also for specialty and high value drugs as well. Thank you for joining me on the show, sir.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much.